Hello, everybody. Today, it's Obscure Reference here, back at it again, and we are recording a special little video in honor of a little movie coming out this week. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called Mission Impossible, small indie film series, but we are up to the seventh installment, and so we decided, before we move into the future, let's take a look back at what's come before. And so today we're going to rank each of the Mission Impossible movies, starting with number one, going all the way through Fallout. And we're just going to go back and forth, give our thoughts. We're going to go one by one. It's going to be great. I'm Patrick, and I'm joined by the second biggest Mission Impossible fan that I know, Austin. Hello,
Oh,
Austin.
how's it going? How's it going?
Not too bad, not
It
too
was
bad.
it was exciting to be able to go back and watch the movies again. I haven't seen the first three in quite a long time. I didn't remembered
Mm.
almost nothing from MI2, so like it was fun to kind of be able to go back and watch them all again. Even though,
Yeah,
the story is not the biggest part of this, I'm sure it'll
no,
add something for our watching of Dead Reckoning Part 1.
yeah, for sure, for sure. I'm looking forward to it, honestly.
Oh yeah.
It's like I'm fairly new to this series. I watched the first one like maybe probably a year ago now at this point, but
Wow. Okay.
then I when I recently moved, I started with two and I'm like I'm just gonna commit and then time kind of got past me and then I all of a sudden watched four Mission Impossible movies in the span of like 2 weeks. So
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, now the series is something special and I'm excited to talk about and rank them
All
all.
right. Let's do it. Let's get into the the one that stands out probably the most, I don't know, comparatively. It's a vastly different film, MI1.
Am I one?
Mission Impossible as they call it.
Yeah. No, I you want to talk about iconic, like there are two movies from the 90s that I think of that just get referenced endlessly. And like you go to the early 2000s, like late 90s, Mission Impossible's up there.
Mhm.
I remember watching it and thinking like obviously I know the Mission Impossible song, like everybody knows that, but like
Right.
the your mission should you choose to accept it, I never connected the dots to Mission Impossible and then of course you get that famous scene where he's in the vault and he's hanging from a cord just like inches above the floor and he can't like even sweat because that'll trigger the alarm
Yeah.
system. Um, so this was a fun watch for me because we start with the cast, what you think will be the cast, and then they all
Right.
just get
And a lot
off.
of surprising faces in there too.
Yeah, what's his face? Martin? No, the guy from the Breakfast Club. Why can't I think of his name?
I'm trying to pull it up
Oh
now.
no, the guy that gets killed by the elevator spikes, which why
Mhm.
were there spikes at the top of that elevator? Um, but that took me off guard for sure. I didn't expect that for a cold open, but it's this one honestly since it has been a year, I don't recall all of it very well, but I can say for sure like the villain was a fun little twist. He's working with that one lady, the Claire, the entire time, and she's interesting. But we also get the introduction of our boy Luther in this movie.
Yes.
He's Luther. He's my boy. I love him.
That was one of the fun things I was tracking through this whole series is like
Hmm.
Luther in every single movie just playing the filling whatever role that movie needs as a character
Yeah.
is awesome. And I mean it works in pretty much all of them. So fair enough. I just think it's hilarious tracking it over the series and then eventually down the line we get Benji and so he kind of pushes
Right.
Luther out of the nerd tech guy role, which is
Hmm.
hilarious. But
Yeah. No. Yeah.
this one, so this one, obviously, like I said, it's so vastly different. That a lot of these early movies are just, you know, director studies almost. I mean, this one by Brian
Oh,
De
for
Palma,
sure.
you get these all tons of weird Dutch angles every time they're having
A
a
lot of touching.
serious, serious conversation, which is
Hmm.
fun, although can also kind of pull you out of it. I think
Hmm.
that kind of opening bit before everyone the failed mission is a lot of fun.
Mhm.
kind of that build up there, and we see that throughout the rest of the series. Um, I love that I'd seen when he meets with the IMF guy in the restaurant with the aquarium,
Oh,
and then it all he
yeah.
uses the gum to explode the aquarium. I think anytime I think about this movie, that's the scene that I think of.
Mhm.
And so I always have like a lot of fun with that. This whole movie kind of is like a masterclass in tension. Obviously, like you were talking about the scene when he's hanging down in the vault room. I mean,
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
something like you would watch in like theater class, like film class, on
Mhm.
like a perfect way to build um, tension in a movie. So this thing has, a lot of good parts. I think the big piece with this movie that I'm not the biggest fan of is the ending. They
Mhm.
tried to go with the big action ending, and the tech's not really there, but also it just doesn't really land. I didn't like feel super attached to the action in the end of that movie. And
Right.
these earlier movies, when you compare them to the newer ones, like the action just doesn't hold up in the same way.
No.
um
Yeah.
when you look at it with hindsight, it's kind of hard to not see um that part of it. So
Mhm.
yeah, the villain, what's her name? It's like a
Um,
man woman name. I can't remember her name now. Anyway, she's just like nondescript and not very important. So like the bad guy part of it, Max, or Maxine, I'm assuming is what her name is. I don't think we actually get an actual piece on
yeah,
that, but
her name's just Max, yeah, as far as
yeah,
I know.
those two parts of it kind of, this one is a solid movie, always going to be a good watch.
Mhm.
Definitely not the best of the series. It's got, it's good and
No.
it's bad.
Yeah.
But this kind of is a good amount of deception. We're going to have kind of like throughout these, like different movies do the deception of like this person's betraying this person better than others. I think
Mhm.
this one does a solid job with it, with the twist of John Voight's character being um,
Yeah.
like faking the whole beginning part. That's a good twist, and it doesn't get too
Mhm.
complicated. So yeah,
No,
I
yeah.
think this is a pretty good one. Where
I
uh where would you put this one on your list ranking wise?
um honestly, for me, I put this uh I put this at number 5 out
Ooh,
of all of
okay.
them. Um I think, oh, well, for reasons we'll get into later, it's
Sure.
definitely not the worst Mission Impossible,
Sure.
but as far as what the rest of the movies do better than that, you can tell this is just like step one. This is like a spy movie with like an
Sure.
artistic
This is
director.
Yeah, this is very much more of a spy movie than a lot of the rest of
Yeah.
them kind of come and go with the spy part of it.
And it's like you said, this is a perfectly watchable movie. That's one I'll probably go back to multiple times. Like, there's good stuff. There's a lot of good stuff in here. But like, I just think of what the other movies do,
Sure.
and it's just like I'd rather watch that over
Sure.
this one.
I
So
think
that's where I'm putting
this one will hint to some of what I was telling you yesterday about my list coming out kind of spicy, but
it. Yeah.
I've got Mission Impossible 1 at 4 on my list. I think
Okay.
um
Interesting.
the one we'll get into next is, the obvious outlier, but there is another
Right.
one that I was not a very big fan of. So that's how I get to it 4. I mean, I think the other three are clearly um, better than it. I think this is
Yeah.
kind of like the watermark for like a good Mission Impossible movie. It's just obviously not the best of them.
Right.
All right, moving on to Mission Impossible 2. An interesting turn after the first one. Obviously, the first movie, like we were talking, a spy thriller kind of movie, like kind of classic spy
Hmm.
storyline. This one, directed by John Woo, goes
Yeah.
in a
You guessed.
very different direction.
Hmm.
Um, and not in a good way, in my opinion.
Hmm.
This movie, I mean, like John Woo movies, they're over the top, so that's just kind of part of, like I said, these early movies being kind of directorial cases. You can kind of see all of the tropes of that director, and you get a lot of that in this movie.
Mhm.
They did a change up on the intro song, which I thought was kind of fun. It was a lot more like
Oh,
rock
I forgot about that.
intro,
Yeah.
and that was a lot of fun for me. When that came on, I was like surprised by it, so that was cool. But
Yeah.
the dialogue in this movie is
Gosh.
bad. Just like, oh man, the every time what's her name, Miss Hall, like what's her first name of her character, Naya, the
Yep.
love interest, like robber character,
Yep.
and Tom Cruise get on the same scene, the dialogue is truly atrocious. I'm just like
It's not good.
cringing every time the two of them um like try and romance each other.
Yep. Mhm.
And so that brings this movie down a lot for me. He also uses slow-mo in this movie so much in
Oh, yeah.
like there are scenes where it makes sense and then scenes where I'm just like I don't even know why we're slow-moing in this moment.
Mhm.
Um which kind of takes me out of it a bit. I think this movie uses the um like masks better than in Mission Impossible 1 did. I think it
Yep.
has some fun ways to do it. Like we got the scene where Ambrose pretends to be Ethan Hunt and then has a conversation with Miss
Yes.
Hall to deduce that she is against him. That was a
Mhm.
lot of fun. Um, I think that the crowning moment of this movie when uh, Ambrose and Ethan Hunt first meet up and they do that big battle in the lab when Ethan
Mm.
is trying to destroy the what's it called? I don't even know. It's off some uh
Oh gosh.
chimera. There you go. The
That's it. Yep.
chimera.
Mhm.
That scene was really really good. I really like that
Yep.
scene, and I kind of wish that that's where the movie had ended. That would have been like an hour and a half long movie, and I think I could have forgiven some of the dialogue and cringier stuff. I mean, the villain, he's awful. I
Yep.
can't handle him as a person. Like he's just flat out sexist at some points, and I'm just
Oh,
like,
extremely. There are moments
um,
where I just cringed. I'm like, "Oh my god."
yeah. So I kind of wish that it ended right there. There's a scene where Miss Hall she injects herself with the chimera to
Mhm.
be kind of like the sacrificial lamb. So I think it would have worked best if they have that big action scene. Naya she injects herself with the chimera and then she, however she does it, she sacrifices herself
Yep.
to get rid of chimera, and that's kind of how the movie wraps up. The next like half hour to 45 minutes that ends this movie is like the most John Woo 30 minutes I've ever seen.
Oh
It's
my
like
god. Yeah.
constant slow-mo action, uh motorcycles hitting each other in the
Yep.
air,
Mhm.
like all sorts of crazy stuff, not the best CGI. So this movie would be less John Woo, but I think I would enjoy it more just because it's a little bit shorter, a little bit more compact. And
Yep.
the action at the end with the like MMA slow mo fighting doesn't really do it when you've got an Australian and Tom Cruise
And
on the
Tom Cruise.
screen doing it. And then the like, although the scene is fun when he like sand kicks the gun up into the air to
Yeah.
kill the bad guy. That's a fun scene, but like obviously I don't know how you do that. In like you couldn't actually do that thing.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think there's too many bad things. It's not a bad movie. Probably not one that I'm ever gonna watch again. It's the Tokyo Drift of this series. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
so yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I'm in a very similar spot to you. I just watching this, I was very surprised at the people they had. Like, hey, Tandy Newton, like she's great. I love her in Westworld. Not her best performance here, but
No, no,
we also get a brief appearance from Anthony Hopkins, which I didn't see coming. So that was
yeah,
cool.
yeah,
I that's about as nice a thing I'll say. I will say the John Woo stuff, just like, okay, cool. This is a John Woo movie for sure. Um, that one moment um, at the beginning. where he just like he's getting his mission. His what is it? His sunglasses are about to
Oh, he
explode.
shoots the they shoot the rocket. I forgot about that. That he's hang like
Oh, that's
climbing the
right.
mountainside, and they
That's
shoot
right.
a rocket that pulls the glasses out, and then he. That's a great scene. It's
Yeah.
so John Woo. It's so
As
over the top, but
as
that's
soon
funny.
as I saw that, I'm like, I know what I'm in for. But I will say, just to touch on your point with the mask, I do think we had a good use of the masks. Like in the beginning of the movie
hmm
when we see that
The
doctor
Ethan
show up
Hunt
on the
faint out.
plane.
Yeah,
Yeah, that actually did get me, and I was like, oh, that was pretty cool, and
yeah.
just did not set the tone for the rest of the movie. I think the only other props I'll give to this movie, I did really enjoy the motorcycle collision. That was funny. Uh, I don't think my reaction was the intended reaction, but it was funny.
Sure.
Um, I do think the escalation of conflict, the tension was pretty palpable towards the end. I think we get it better. Like it's done better in further Mission Impossible movies, but we had like two planes of action where Ethan's fighting Sean Ambrose, and then you have Luther and the others looking for Tandy Newton's character.
hmm
And as dumb as like her character is in like that plot line, it's still like tense. There's enough going on where it's like I'm actually watching this, but like once I'm past it, I'm never gonna think about it again.
hmm
Um, so yeah, not my least favorite for sure. I think.
Yeah, it definitely lands last on the list, sixth place for me as well. How did you feel? So I my biggest like weird moment I had with this movie was
Uh huh.
uh when he gets really mad at his henchman for like seemingly no reason and then chops off part of his finger.
Oh
And I'm
yeah.
like, and then there's this whole bit throughout the movie where there's weird things with his finger, and I'm just like, this is a weird, like, I guess there in a way you could make it work because it's a fun way. And then there's the mask reveal at the end
Hmm.
when he kills him, and you can see that it's his
Oh
bandaged finger.
yep.
But
Yep.
um, it just felt so out of place because Ambrose gets so mad for no reason, just to like chop his finger off. It's like they had the idea of the finger thing and then had to invent a reason for it to happen, and it just didn't work.
Yeah. They're like, how do we get this normal looking white guy to be intimidating? Let's make him angry.
There you
It's-
go. All right, yeah, that one lands at sixth for both of us. Moving us into Mission Impossible 3, bringing in director J.J. Abrams in this one. How did you
yep.
feel about this movie here?
So a lot of people will tell you get through the first three Mission Impossibles. Once you get to Ghost Protocol, everything's peachy keen, everything's great. I'm gonna push back a little bit and say this is where the series gets good, I think.
For sure.
I like this movie maybe more than other people do. It's probably not gonna rank super high on my list, but like just watching it, seeing like the level of um actors that are and actresses that are in this movie,
Oh yeah,
the this I think the story leaves a little bit to be desired, but like we see a lot of like there's cool set pieces in here. There's fun action sequences. Like, you know, we introduced a new side to Ethan that we hadn't seen to this point, and that's been felt like in every movie since this one.
for sure.
Um, I think we do see a performance from Tom Cruise, and this might be a hot take, but like you get that cold open between Ethan and Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, where he's gonna shoot his wife, and he's just like acting his ass off, and like
Oh
we
yeah,
don't see that level of performance from Tom Cruise for the rest of the movies, and I will stand on that hill.
I think this
Um,
is his best performance for sure as Ethan Hunt.
yeah, and I think there's enough holding it back for me to like keep it from going too high, but like I do think this is where Mission Impossible truly starts being good.
Yeah,
Um, I will say I actually really did like the side cast. I don't think they had enough to do in this one. Still, we're still having that problem with these movies.
for sure.
Um,
We're starting to build the cast though. We actually, I mean, we
yeah,
get Ving Rhames keeps showing up.
yep,
But we're starting to get Simon Pegg in this movie as Benji, which is a great
yeah,
addition, obviously. So we're starting to build the core team.
yeah. I really dug that. Because I minimal knowledge of Mission Impossible. I've seen the trailers. Like I remember watching the trailers for Fallout when that was coming out, and I saw Simon Pegg in there. I'm like, okay, cool. And then see him show up in this movie. I'm like, Oh, this is where we start. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
But we also have just, Michelle Monaghan as his wife. She's great. Maggie Q, she's also great. Doesn't have enough to
She's
do in this
there.
movie.
Yeah, she's just there kind of.
Carrie Russell, I didn't expect to see Carrie Russell, but then I'm like, wait, JJ directed this. This is starting to add up. Um, but the way she's introduced and then summarily taken out, I was like, oh shit. Like I
Yeah,
was actually like that was a visceral death for her. I was not
for sure.
prepared for that at
For
all.
sure.
But and then of course, I mean, we also have Lawrence Fishburne. Gotta bring him up. He's awesome here.
Yeah.
And real quick too, shout out to Aaron Paul being in this movie.
Just showing up, and I was like, wait, what?
I saw him walk on the screen. I'm like, wait, what? When did Breaking Bad start? And I was trying to connect the dots because it's like he does not look like Jesse Pinkman yet.
The
He
funny
is
thing
so
is, you like in a weird way, you could be like, is his character like in the Mission Impossible universe? Because he's kind of like the drunk reject
hmm
brother, which kind of matches up with his character in Breaking Bad. You just go
hmm
from alcohol to drugs, and then you're just there.
Yeah. It really took me off guard. He's in like a couple of scenes. Like it's
For
like good
sure.
for you, moving up in the world, man. Um, I do. I do want to shout out real quick to the line where he's infiltrating the Vatican and he gets to the top of that wall and he's like, Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. I'm like, yep,
I
that's what I'm
know,
watching.
dude. It was some of
That's what
the
I'm watching.
this. Oh my god, some of the lines in this movie, like it doesn't match MI2, but some of the lines are.
No, it's like I mean, yeah, it's. I really like this movie. This is when I'll definitely go back and watch at some point. I almost did because like I think the gap between when I watched this one and then Rogue or Ghost Protocol was a little sizable. So my memory's a little fuzzy on it, but that might also just speak to what this movie does with its story. So um, yeah, I like this movie not as much as some of the other ones, but I do really like it.
See, you may you think that you're high on this movie. I'm definitely
Mhm.
even higher on this movie than you are.
Whoa.
I remember when I was younger, like more when it actually came out. I used to watch this movie quite often, and it was I really enjoyed this movie. I hadn't
Mhm.
seen it in quite a while, so this is my first time in a couple of years at least seeing it.
Okay.
But yeah, this is one of my favorite of the movies, the Mission Impossible movies. I think kind of building on what you were saying. Well, first going back a little bit to MI2, I think the one thing MI2 doesn't get credit for is really starting the trend of the action in this series
hmm
because people kind of look down on that movie. It is really the start of the bombastic action, like set pieces. Like
Yeah.
MI1 doesn't really have any. Like the big thing is like the exploding, aquarium tank, and then the end it's like a lot of CGI.
hmm
So MI2 really introduces us to what's going to be the action of the future of the series, and MI3 is what gives us the emotional core of this series.
Yeah. I'll agree with it.
Right from the opening, that this whole movie is an emotional roller coaster, but that opening is kind of like a amalgamation of all of the emotions you're gonna feel throughout this whole movie. We open with
hmm
the sort of the ending of the movie with this like gut wrenching kind of emotional performance by Ethan Hunt as Owen Davian is like threatening to kill his wife.
hmm
You get that, and then you get this like really loving kind of short story of how we get the Michelle Monaghan, Tom Cruise love story over their party at the house, which is a lot of fun. Um, and then we get an interesting way to get Ethan Hunt his mission. I don't know if it's the best one where he meets him in the convenience store and drops off the
Oh,
like
yeah.
prepaid camera, and then he like watches it on there. It's fun seeing Tom Cruise pretend to be the like boring, yeah, I work for the traffic control people and I find
Mhm.
the story of traffic so interesting is hilarious. It's a great like cover story for him. So I think the things that make this movie so good are that emotion. This has got second to none best story in the entire series. Like The way that they
Mm,
connect the emotion with Michelle Monaghan and Tom Cruise, I think, is the best. Um, a couple in the future come close, but I think this is the best of them. I think that it's the best opening action or opening of any of the movies over any of them. I think that that opening
mm.
action scene when they go to get Carrie Russell's character is a lot a lot of fun. Obviously,
Yeah.
the surprise ending of her dying in their hands is uh like a twist that you're not really expecting. I mean, you expect them to we had the failure obviously in MI1, but that's like a total failure. This is like a sort of failure because they all get out of it, but
Hmm.
um she doesn't survive. And
It's very violent.
man, yeah, Philip Seymour Hoffman's uh portrayal of Owen Davian is
Dude.
so good. So good.
Yeah.
Like the best performances in this movie by far in the series. Um, and I think that's what makes this such a good movie is that you
Hmm.
got the strong story with love story with Michelle Monaghan, and then you got the strong back and forth with Philip Seymour Hoffman and Ethan Hunt, which is what makes for a good uh, Mission Impossible movie. Like I
Hmm.
said, some of the dialogue not always the best,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but I think how emotional the movie is kind of can get you past that sometimes.
Hmm.
The big thing with this movie is the action looks out of date when you compare
Yeah.
it to the new movies because they did this one so much with CGI. It's past MI2 and MI1 where the CGI looks pretty good, but
Hmm.
it's so clearly they haven't gotten to the Tom Cruise does everything in camera part.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
the action is good but not great, and that's the one thing that brings this movie down a little bit for me. Other than that, even the twist of like everyone we think it's Lawrence Fishburne who's the bad IMF agent, and it ends up being his handler who's the
Hmm.
bad guy. His motivations kind of whatever. I mean, he kind of just
Yeah.
spews some nonsensical stuff about, you know, kind of like MI6 version of Lane, Solomon Lane, where he's kind of preachy
Mhm.
and doesn't really say a lot. Um,
Yeah.
but Owen Davian's character is so good that it makes up for that. The,
Yeah.
the scene going into the Vatican is good, but I think the scenes get better over time.
Yeah.
Any of the stuff with Owen Davian and Ethan Hunt is just so good. For me, this is where it's going to get interesting. Ranking this one, I've got this one second on my list
Oh, second.
of
Okay.
the movies. I really like this movie. I think that one is
Interesting.
clearly head and shoulders the best movie, but this one is in second for me. 2 through 4 were really tight, and I had to really think about them. I watched um, when I was doing breaking it down, trying to decide between 1 and 3. That was really
Hmm.
tight for me, but I decided that 3 was better, and then eventually my 2 and 3 spots I was really contemplating. But yeah, I've got MI3 at second on my list.
Interesting. Uh, I did forget to mention, I saw a clip of them putting a mask on Ethan Hunt when he was becoming Owen Davian, and just like the
Yes, and
camera
it's in
tricks.
camera and it's so good.
Yeah,
It's
the,
so
the
good.
you can like you can't even tell when it becomes Philip
I
Seymour Hoffman.
know.
Like it's just that it's incredible, like on a technical standpoint. But
Yep.
I think I am still gonna leave it at number four. It is absolutely my favorite of the original trilogy, so to speak. But I really like the direction they take with the sequels, and I'm ready. I'm excited to talk about them.
All right, that moves us into Mission Impossible 4 Ghost Protocol. The one that everyone says kind of turns the ship in the Mission Impossible series. This one's directed by Brad Bird. And I think this is it's a good movie that's brought down by just a couple of things for me.
Mhm.
Um Obviously the Abu Dhabi scene or the Burj Hotel scenes are iconic in the Mission Impossible kind of ethos. It's the
Mhm.
first really big action set piece where they do it in camera and Tom Cruise is actually on the side of that building. it's really good at this movie has builds good tension in that scene.
Yeah.
Um, I've got a couple of problems with this movie though. All of the through literally in every scene in this movie when they use a gadget, it has to break for some reason. And
Okay. Yeah.
I don't find that fun and enjoyable. Like
Uh-huh.
I don't think it's an add to the scene when like I think it's good. Like say the scene when they're breaking into the Kremlin and like you get the two perspectives and it breaks the one camera. I think that works really well because
Mhm.
like oh, that makes sense why that would break, right? There's one camera and you can see it moving to match his eye line. But when you get the ones like for whatever reason the one glove just stops working while he's on the side of the building and I'm
Yeah.
just like I don't I don't find that fun. Then the mask machine breaks so we don't get the mask. So like the only face
Yeah.
reveal in this entire movie is in the like um dust storm scene and it's not really a good one because you're kind of like
Mhm.
is that a different person? Like I looked at that and I was like that could have been the same guy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um so a lot of that kind of stuff bothered me and then the two characters in this movie that I really didn't find that enjoyable. Benji as the new giddy field agent was kind of grinded on me. Like I really didn't it the more he did it, the less I liked his character.
Yeah.
And he got his redemptive scene in the end where he gets to shoot the bad guy and that's a good scene, but I think a lot of the scenes earlier just kind of annoy me. And Jeremy Renner's character, this backstory with Ethan Hunt, I think is really good.
Yeah.
It adds emotion to this movie. But he has so many scenes where he's just kind of nagging or like, pre- like when he's gonna jump out and he's like, I don't know if I can do it. Like I'm jumping out of a window, and I'm like, this I don't. This is just not. I don't like this. I
Yeah.
so his character, I didn't enjoy all that much either.
Mhm.
Um, but it the thing that's very redemptive for this movie is there's so much good action. So
Yes.
all of the Burj Hotel stuff, incredible. I think there's good tension built, although not always in the best ways with the tech breaking, where they have to
Mhm.
build the two separate rooms to do the um, stuff. I think that's yeah, that's a lot of fun. The action scenes when they're fighting the two different groups, that's great.
Mhm.
Tom Cruise going up the side of the building, awesome. And the real like the really the best scene I think in this movie is the car lift scene with Tom Cruise and the bad guy where they're fighting through the car garage. I really like that scene.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fun. The dust storm run through uh, the dust kind of was like I can't really tell what's going on. So like it's not I mean it's okay. It's not the best. And
Yeah.
I guess kind of jumping back to the beginning, the breaking out of the prison scene, the back and forth with him and Benji through the video cams is a lot of
Oh
fun.
yeah.
So that's
Yep.
a good action scene there too. Um, so overall, a lot of good, but the bad characters and the like gadgets always breaking kind of brings this one down for me. Oh yeah, the party scene is kind of whatever for me. It's decent.
Oh yeah.
It's nothing good or bad. It's okay. But those characters and the that kind of wears on me in this one, and so I'm lower on this one than a lot of people. I agree that it is a turning point in the series. It's just not as good of a movie as for me as a lot of people think.
Okay. Yeah. This. Let me walk you through my thought process when I started this movie.
Sure.
We get the breakout sequence, and at this point, I'm thinking it's been a couple of months since I watched the third one. Did Ethan do something at the end of the third one to get arrested and put
Right.
in a Russian jail? Uh, and then we get the answer for that later, and I just love how it comes full circle for that. But um, I we get to we get that fun back and forth where he's like talking with Benji over the CCTV stuff, and it's just fun. It's like we're getting some of that banter going. This is like I don't know if we really got a lot of that in the third one, but
Yeah.
this one for
It's a more
sure we're getting a
serious
lot.
movie for sure.
Yeah, we're getting more of that banter and building more of a team in this one, and even if we only are carrying over Simon Pegg and Ving Rhames, kind of, from the third one. So, but we get to the end of that breakout sequence. You know, he goes back to save his friend, which is, you know, is a good testament to who Ethan Hunt is. And then he, you know, they're escaping through the tunnels. He turns around, looks at the camera, and he says, "Light the fuse," and that's what starts the title sequence. And that just got like a little chuckle out of me because I was like, "Yeah, all right, I'm gonna like this. We're in.
And I
I'm so in."
believe this starts the um, idea of like kind of previewing the entire movie through the cutscene, like title screen scene. So like they do
Mm,
the like pull and it shows all the different scenes that you're going to see going forward, little bits of it. And I
yeah,
think that we get that in 5 and 6. Is we do definitely get it in those. I'm just not sure if it's in the ones before that. This is the one when I really noticed it.
I want to say it is, but I also don't want to put money on that because it's been a minute since I watched those. Um, but it was like that. Just the way we got to the title sequence, I'm like, that's awesome. That's cool. And then we get this, you know, this story that is both like there are parts I love about it, like really love, and then there are parts that just kind of bring it down a little bit. Like, for example, Cobalt is just whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
he's a whatever villain.
he's very whatever, and you throw in the the police guy that's chasing Ethan, he
The
just
Russian
calls him.
guy, he's just
Yeah,
annoying.
I didn't like him, and I think the purpose he serves is minimal and could have been could have been given to someone else that was already part of the movie before he was. So I there's some stuff here that just feels like dead weight, and some stuff that just doesn't work like I think they wanted it to.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think that we get some really cool gadget stuff going here. I think, you know, despite like some of the stuff going haywire. I mean, this is, you know, Brad Bird. He did The Incredibles. He's done. I feel like he's done another spy movie before, but like you really feel his touch in this movie, and I think the like just the screen that Ethan and Simon Pegg's character used to go through the hallway was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I I was just like, man, that's. I'm just trying to like figure out how it's all working. And it's really cool. And you had that one little comedic bit where Benji's accidentally on camera for like the briefest of second, and that got a laugh out of me. That might have been the funniest part of the movie for me. But uh, then you have that bit with Jeremy Renner with the magnet stuff with the little uh, Roomba that's keeping him from hitting the spikes as he's like taking the getting the data out of the computer. I think while they're at the party. That was a really cool sequence. Um, I think the the team that we have in this movie is a precursor for what we have for moving forward. I really like who we have here. Like we have, you know, obviously Ethan Hunt and Simon Pegg, but we also throw in Jeremy Renner, who, you know, I'm an MCU guy. I know him as Hawkeye. I know him as the guy from the Bourne Legacy. Like I don't think of him as like a top tier actor very often, even if he is good in like Endgame, you know, for the arc there. But he's good. He's really good in this movie. I think what he has to work with is super interesting. His what you think is a conflicting, um, you know, story arc with Ethan, with his wife and how he couldn't protect her. I think that's interesting, and then how that gets turned on its head towards the end is I thought was really good. Kind of brings this whole story together for me. But you also have Paula Patton's character, Jane Carter, and moving after this one, like just kind of speak to how much you know she's not a standout for me, but like I was disappointed she wasn't in the next one. I think giving her the
My
personal um, goal of like getting revenge for her boyfriend, played by Josh Holloway, so another J.J. Abrams alum. So shout out to
mm-hmm.
that. Can't get out of Mission Impossible movie alive, but you know, um, but having her, you know, be motivated by that, even and having that come into conflict when they actually run into Leia Sedo's character at Burj Khalifa, uh, I thought was interesting. And you know, maybe it doesn't go the way I thought it would. Maybe I don't love that, but like she's interesting the entire time.
Well, that's
Um,
my big thing is it plays like the way they play it is like it was her boyfriend rather than like an agent on her team. And so
yeah,
it kind of undermines the weird like tension between her and Ethan Hunt. And that's what kind of brings it down for me on that is like
Mhm.
they have that whole scene in the that dude's mansion
Yep.
where he kisses her, and then she's like somewhat flabbergasted by it. But I'm like, you've spent this whole movie being so emotionally wrecked about the fact that your
Mhm.
boyfriend slash agent friend died. I'm like, I can't put these two things are conflicting for me on their story.
Yeah, and that's fair. And I always viewed that just because, like, I don't know. The whole story of Ethan with his wife in this movie was like actually like really good. Just like the entire
Hmm.
time I'm thinking, oh, she's like actually dead. Only to have that turn on its head at the end, obviously. But so I'm not expecting him to like actually find a love interest in this movie. And I think their interactions kind of spoke to that for me, at least early on. Like they were just partners and friends. I'm like, I really like that. We don't need to have a romance shoehorned into every, action movie or whatever. Um, but there was that little bit. I'm like, are we actually going that way? I don't know if I want that.
Yeah.
But um, yeah, I also the Burj Khalifa scene where he's climbing up that. Like, I know you didn't like the glove thing malfunctioning. I agree that that does seem a little like just like a cheap ploy to add up tension, but like it worked. Him climbing up with just one glove, and you see the sandstorm approaching in the distance. Like that whole sequence was fun, and then seeing him jump down and just eating shit and almost falling down the building was a fun payoff to all that. And then you get the chase scene in the sandstorm, which like did kind of drag on a little bit, but like you get to the point where he's almost run over by Cobalt in the truck or whatever, and it's like, oh, that's fun stuff you can do with this where there's low visibility, and then he get Cobalt climbs on the slowest moving truck I've ever seen, and Tom Cruise, the guy we know for running, can't catch up to this truck, and it's like, well, that took me out of it a little bit. That was a very slow car. He could have caught that, but and it's just little things like that that just kind of add up. But like you get to the end, you see um, you get the reveal that his wife's alive, and that was all just a cover for Ethan to go kill some Serbians and end up in a Russian jail to find out, get to the bottom of Cobalt. It's just full circle, and his wife's actually alive. And you get that brief smile between them as he waves, and it's like, I really like that direction. Like, we don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to kill her to take her out of the story, but like, she's still around. And, I didn't know if she would come back after this. I just kind of assumed this was it for her. Um, but I thought it was a good send off, and I liked it quite a bit.
Yeah, I think the ending to this movie is like probably the best part. I mean, it's such a good wrap up at the end. You get a lot of good emotional beats. I
Yep.
think that this does have a good emotional through line. Um, so yeah, I think this is a movie of high highs and low lows.
Hmm.
Uh, really, for me. But I mean, you can clearly see this is the one that starts the train to the what we get now, which is really good, like good movies.
Yep. Yep.
For
There.
uh for me, I've got this one uh fifth on my list.
Fifth. Okay. Yeah.
Yep. That's yeah.
I mean, yeah, based on that ends up honestly. But this one's number three for me. It is, like you said, high highs, low lows. I think it ultimately does add up to a better whole product for me than Mission Impossible 3 does. But I could interchange those. I can see that changing on any given day. But like, just compared to what we still have left to talk about, like it doesn't not hold a candle. But like I'd rather watch those two over this one.
Mhm. All right, that brings us to Mission Impossible 5 Rogue Nation. What do you think about this one, Patrick?
Oh boy. Oh boy. This one was really good. This is a good movie.
Yeah.
This we have a lot of carryover from the last one in terms of the cast, and you really start building out that team.
Hmm.
Uh, and this is the first one I believe where Christopher McQuarrie is in full control. He's the director of this one.
Yep. He
Um,
did rewrites on 4, but he's in control as far as director
okay,
and screenplay writer.
sweet. But yeah, this one's really good. I as soon as we start and he goes to uh, we learn about we hear at the end of Ghost Protocol, like we need you to track down the Syndicate. I'm like,
The
is that
Syndicate. Yeah.
gonna carry over to the next one? And then sure enough, and then we I don't know if it's the cold open or not, but we get to the record shop where he talks to that IMF agent. She gives him the record and he goes and listens to it. It switches over to the Syndicate, saying, we know who you are, all this, blah blah blah. And he turns around and we see the main villain for this movie just murk the record store lady in the back of the head, and then he's gassed up. I'm like, we're in for a ride.
Mm-hmm.
We're in for something. And I just the entire everything after that, I was just I don't want to say glued to the screen, but like I was very very interested and on the edge of my seat most of this movie. Um, we have a really the sequence that takes place at the opera while they're playing Turandot, like shout out to
Incredible.
that, like such a great sequence, like using I'm not even sure what instrument it was, but that the one guy that Ethan was fighting on the rafters, that was just clever use of of deceiving people and like saying, "Hey, I actually have a gun and I made it backstage on the opera house."
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you also introduce Rebecca Ferguson's character, and her introduction. It's like I see her show up in the interrogation scene where they're about to interrogate Ethan, and it's like I know she's in other movies after this one. I know she's in the next one, and I know she's in the one after that. So
Mm-hmm.
I know there's more to her, and then she just like beats the shit out of everybody in that room. It's like, oh, all right, I like her a lot. She's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's a fun piece of this puzzle. She's not necessarily a good guy to begin with, and the more you learn about her, the more you kind of discover what she's up to. Um, but you also introduce Alec Baldwin into the pictures, the director of the CIA. He's trying to shut down the IMF, uh, and you have a fun little play between him and Jeremy Renner at the beginning and the end of this movie. Um, but I love how they're able to hook in like because the entire movie you're kind of it starts with just Ethan on his own. He's slowly like, hey Benji, come to the opera in Austria.
Right.
I need you to help me out with one thing, and then we're cool. You don't need to deal with me anymore. And then he's like, no, I'm sticking with you to the end of this one. And then you have Jeremy Renner and Ving Rhames' character team up, and they meet up. What was it, Casablanca? I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you're just slowly building up the team, and then you get to the end, and then Rebecca Ferguson's part of the team now, and it's like, oh, we got the squad, let's go. It's so hype, but like I could honestly gush about this movie on and on. I'll try to wrap this up quickly, but I think the villain in this movie, like it doesn't seem like he gets a lot to do in this movie, but like you feel his presence the entire time. Uh, that being, I don't think he's the strongest. I don't think feeling his presence throughout the movie does enough to save him as like the best villain of the franchise. I think once we start talking about Fallout, that conversation gets a little bit more interesting. But uh,
Really interesting.
well, just in terms of what they do with his character and stuff, like uh, I really I needed he wasn't on screen enough. I don't think like we see him at the beginning, we see him here and there, and then we see him at the end really, but like they don't. It doesn't feel like they do a whole lot with him. I
Mm-hmm.
think I like Sean Harris as an actor. He does a good job as Solomon Lane, but like um, that last there are like a few good sequences, like the chase scene on the motorcycles. We have the final sequence where Solomon's chasing Ethan. You think he's down for the count. You get the reversal there, and
Mm-hmm.
that whole last sequence is just so satisfying. Where he thinks he has Ethan dead to rights. He jumps down the manhole cover whole thing, and oh, all of a sudden he's in a box, and he's just like trying to shoot his way out of the box. And you have the entire squad showing up, and it's like I just had the biggest dumbest smile on my face. I'm like, this was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
This movie rules.
Yeah, I think this is hands down the best movie. Just kind of telegraphing my placing of it,
Mhm.
but so this is obviously if 5 and 6 are in their own category in terms of the action. I'm gonna say five
Yeah,
is the best action that this entire series has. That opening scene with the airplane just really throws you into it right off the bat, and you're just
Mm,
like, oh, this is what I'm in for this whole movie. Like this is really going to be something. The opera scene, incredibly well choreographed. I mean, you always
seriously.
know what's going on in the scene, even though it's this huge opera with like four different vantage like points of view that you're paying
Hmm.
attention to, and it's shot so well. All of the car chase stuff is really strong, and the chase at the end of the movie, it's all top tier action, all shot really well. I Yeah, I just think it's the best in this entire series. I think that the one thing that this movie does that redeems some of the stuff of MI4 is the Alec Baldwin becomes the annoying IMF guy and replaces Jeremy Renner. And so Jeremy
Hmm.
Renner gets to be like much more part of the team and not kind of like
Yeah,
super annoying characterization. And Alec
he's
Baldwin doesn't show up enough. He's kind of like it fits his type of person. He looks like a mean, like corporate guy. And
yeah.
whereas Jeremy Renner doesn't feel like that. So I think it fits their characters better and it makes them work out in the story a lot better.
Hmm.
I think that Solomon Lane in this movie for me is the best villain in the entire series. I
Okay.
think it's ruined in six, but we're
Oh,
not there yet.
okay.
So I think the things that make a great Mission Impossible movie is a good love situation for Ethan Hunt, really good action, and a good villain, and then an emotional through line. And this has all four of
Mhm.
those, and it does all four of them really well. The reason I think Solomon Lane is such a good villain is because he's essentially he does what Dial of Destiny did so poorly is like the what if Ethan Hunt was uh like morally gray, and
Mm,
like that's what Solomon Lane is. It's like if you have all of the skills and the ability to predict what's going to happen, and you can do all that, except you're not concerned with saving everyone's lives. You have a
yeah,
deeper motive about trying to do something in the world. It's kind of like Sherlock Moriarty, Batman, Joker type kind of
yeah,
back and forth.
yeah. I get
And so
that.
that's
Yeah.
why I think he's the best villain in this movie. Um, and then the yeah, the part with Ilsa, I think builds a good um kind of romance back and forth for Ethan.
Hmm.
And we get to play off the two different lives that Ethan has tried to live, the like pedestrian life with Michelle Monaghan's character and the spy life version with Ilsa. And I think that's a really fun pseudo love triangle because Michelle's not really in it. So she's not
Right.
actually like, the third character, but it creates a fun triangle there. And, we get the stuff where we get to play Ethan Hunt against Alec Baldwin's character, which is fun too. Like when they're trying to track him down, and they go to Costa Rica or Puerto Rico or something like that, and then Ethan is actually like just watching them on the video camera as they break into the thing. That's
Hmm.
gets it kind of builds Ethan's character, and then the payoff at the end of this movie where Solomon Lane, the whole time it seems like Solomon's pulling all of the strings and causing all of these things to happen. And then
Yeah.
secretly, Ethan Hunt actually was right there on the same level and just let him believe that and then gets him in the end in the box
Yep.
is so good. It
Yeah.
ties everything together so well. This is it is the best movie in the series for me. It's so good. There's not really any part of it that I think is a letdown. I think it's got the best versions of the characters outside of Ethan Hunt, just because I think that's MI3. I think
Hmm.
it's got a really strong story. It's got strong emotional go through, beat through, and it doesn't go too far with the deception. We do get the like, is Ilsa on their team? Is she not? But it's
Hmm.
really clearly drawn out for us what side she's on, depending on like on different points.
Right.
And so I think that is what saves this movie from becoming too convoluted. Um, and I guess the one thing that's like kind of whatever about this movie is the MacGuffin that they're going after, like the red box with the all
Oh,
of the money is kind of
mhm.
like whatever, but I mean that's most of them. I mean it's a
Yeah,
virus or a nuke or whatever it is, the thing that the bad guy wants. It doesn't really matter.
yeah.
So yeah,
A lot of
this
people.
is number one on the list for me without a doubt, and I think it's a clear number one.
Hmm. All right. Well, um, I do agree. Like on a lot of the points you made, I do think this is easily one of the best Mission Impossible movies. But I just I'll get into it more once we start talking about Fallout. But I do think this is probably number two for me. But I really like this movie a lot.
Alrighty,
It's very
that
good.
brings us to Mission Impossible 6 Fallout. This movie, I think, is I'm going to characterize it as MI4 having the same similar problems MI4 has, but directed and uh, designed better. So
Mm,
I think this, again, incredible action, shot incredibly well. The Halo jump, the scene in the bathroom with Henry Cavill's reloadable fists.
Reload this, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Um, Minus the final action, all of the action is really strong in this movie. It seems to me like when they open this movie, there's like no build up into the storyline. They kind of just like you open on
Yeah.
Ethan Hunt getting the mission, and I'm like, oh, this is weird. Like, we're
Hmm.
so used to these kind of like mini stories at the beginning of the movies that it kind of um, threw me for a loop on that. We go straight into the like trying to get the plutonium, and I don't know how I feel about them leaving the case and then the plutonium being stolen.
Yeah.
It feels like kind of like they needed it for the story, so it happened rather than being kind of like organic. But
Mhm.
it's not horrendous. It's fine. It's whatever. I
Right,
think that
right, right.
the hospital subterfuge where they like fake out the guy to make it seem like they nuked the three places so they could get the information is such a good scene. And then they get the like drop down of the walls, and he
Mhm.
realizes he just gave up. Um, Everything is a ton of fun. I really like that scene. My big problem with, or one of my big problems with this movie is I think that Henry Cavill's character and the blonde, uh, like go between character, when they open their mouths, are really annoying.
Mm.
I think Henry Cavill is great anytime you put him in an action scene and he's not saying any words. There's a lot of great scenes there with him. But as soon as he opens his mouth, he says these really dumb lines a lot of the time that they just are not fun, and I think his character is just not I don't know. Like he doesn't play the twist that comes where he's John Lark just doesn't work for me because he doesn't seem like that character the entire time. So like I'm not like, "Oh my god." Like that's how that ends up going. And then he gets a lot of these lines where he's like, "Why won't you just die?" And I'm like, "This is just so on the nose. I just don't. It's not his character is not for me when he's speaking, but he's a lot of fun when he's doing the action." And the blonde character just has like I don't even know. It's like an annoying howlier than thou, like weird kind of like thing that goes on, and then she has this whole thing where she just like is like, "Oh, you need to bring me Ilsa because she's getting in the way of you and I loving each other." And then she kisses him, and I'm just like, "This is not for me." I'm annoyed that she's coming back in the next movie. So those two, for me, kind of annoying. I think that Solomon Lane's character is ruined in this movie for me because he becomes the like religious pariah character where he's just like spouting nonsense in this movie that doesn't mean anything. Like at no point do they explain why they're the bigger the destruction, the longer the peace. Like they just spout that over and over again, but don't ever explain why or how. We're just like, oh, he's gonna cause. a third of the world's population to not have water, and then everyone's gonna have to come together, and it's pretty vague. So that it just I don't really like it. Um, and then I like a lot of the action. After the helicopters, the action goes off a cliff for me, literally and
Okay.
figuratively. Um, it's just so over the top when they're like falling down the side of this mountain with these helicopters and like hanging on above each other, and then Henry Cavill for whatever reason gets like acid faced, so he looks like this really ridiculous like Bond villain from back in the day, and they're fighting on the edge of the cliff. It's just the he ends up killing the villain by hitting him with a like line of rope that's holding the helicopter up, and then they all fall off the mountain. It was too much. They went too far with it at the end. Um, and so as good as the action is throughout, the kind of story being okay, the new characters being kind of annoying, and the action at the end that brings it down for me. It's still a really good movie. Um, it's not like it's going to be at the bottom of my list or anything, but it's again, it's the highs and lows thing for me.
Mhm. I mean, this was a movie that, anytime anyone talked about Mission Impossible, like they just keep getting better. Like the latest one's the best one, that's a lot of what I heard. So I came into this a little bit skeptical. And like we get that cold open. It's like that entire bit where they lose the plutonium and then they fake the nukes going off at three religious hotspots, and they trick that guy into thinking that they got Wolf Blitzer to read his manifesto online on live TV. And the entire time I'm like, this is this actually happened. Like they just actually nuked like Mecca and Rome and whatever. Like I just watched Fast X where Vin Diesel saved the Vatican. Like what is happening here? Um, and then we get that reveal that it was a fake out. I'm like, oh, they got me. They actually got me. Like that was impressive. And it just kind of keeps amping up from there. I think uh, we get the introduction. Then, like we still lost plutonium. We still have to go and find it. But so we have Ethan Hunt teaming up with Henry Cavill's character. He starts off as August Walker, which is an odd name, but I was willing to forgive it because look, Henry Cavill's here. The reason why Justice League looked weird because he has a mustache. He's here. Um, but
One of the
I
fun tidbits that come out of this movie is like it's like the Lord of the Rings one when he kicks the thing where it's like everyone's like,
yeah.
"Did you know?" And it's like the same thing with the scene when Ethan Hunt, when Tom Cruise is running and then he
Oh yeah.
tries to jump from the one building to the other and he breaks his ankle, and everyone goes, "Did you know that he broke his ankle in that
He
scene?"
actually
And
broke his ankle. Yeah.
yeah.
What they won't tell you is the Halo jump. He made that jump a lot. um,
Oh yeah. There's a podcast called Light the Fuse or Beyond the Fuse or something like that,
uh,
where they talk about the Mission Impossible movies. And Christopher McQuarrie is on the podcast, and he talks
oh,
about
cool.
how when they were trying to shoot that scene, the way they had to do the focus as they were jumping out doing the Halo jump,
Mhm.
um, they like couldn't get it right with the focus, and so it kept being just out of focus. Um,
Yeah.
and so after like, because they only have like a short period of time, right, to do it, because it's like at that dusk, like sunrise
Mhm.
sunset time that they could shoot it, and so they had to keep doing it, and it kept getting out of focus and out of focus, and they had to like do this weird trick with it to get it to work right. It's a really great like snippet from that movie that explains how they had to get it all figured out. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
one of those things too.
No, I love that. I think on the offset, like on the onset with Ethan Hunt and Henry Cavill's character, like their rapport is interesting, and Angela Bassett's in this movie too, and I have thoughts on that. But she, in talking to Alec Baldwin's character, she's like, "See, you're like a scalpel. I prefer the use of a hammer." And it cuts to Henry Cavill's character. He's like, "Yep, I'm a hammer," and it's like, "You're goddamn right, he's a hammer. Let's go." But you get that back and forth between them when they're about to do the Halo jump, and it's like Tom Cruise is explaining how to work this skydiving gear to Henry Cavill's character, and you get that visual representation of whether or not their oxygen is plugged in, and you see that as Tom Cruise plugs his in, then you can see his face again. You see it, as they jump out and they get struck by lightning. Because who would have thought? But uh, Henry Cavill, you see his mask light up or fog up. You're like, oh shit, we're gonna have to get to him. And at this point in the movie, I'm like, oh, Henry Cavill's character is a good guy. I didn't get that from the trailer, but okay, let's keep watching. Let's see what happens. And you get to the point, and then you get to the bathroom scene, and it's like, my good, that is probably one of the highlights of this movie for me. Like that was a really good fight scene. Like
That's a great scene, yeah.
just that one guy's handing their asses to him. Superman and Tom Cruise. Like, come on, it's awesome. And then you get to the point where like he's got Ethan at a standstill. You think Henry Cavill's off screen, and then you just see the guy get shot. And like, oh, Henry Cavill would have done that. Like that seems like something his character would do. And you turn, it's Rebecca Ferguson. I'm like, oh, so that's two times this movie fooled me completely. And we turn him in. Then we meet the White Widow, which played by Vanessa Kirby. And something I missed in this movie when I was watching this, but being the what is it, granddaughter? No, just the daughter of Max from the first movie. I'm like, I didn't even catch that. That is a neat little tie to the first one that they didn't need to do, and I appreciate little stuff like that. Uh, I think her character is a little interesting to me. I think it provides another frame of reference for all these people who are like Ethan's not willing to sacrifice the one for the many, and we see that in the deal that he makes with the White Widow. But their back and forth was interesting. That whole VIP lounge sequence was fun for me, where he starts off subtly taking these people out, and then it just evolves or devolves into just mayhem. And Rebecca Ferguson's getting in on the action too, and it's a really good scene. Just all the action. Just assume that it's really good for me.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get that little bit, and this is also something I miss. Is a lot of the stuff I picked up just from listening to people talk about this movie. But you see Henry Cavill pick up the phone from who you think is John Lark, and it, you see him pick it up, and it's like cracked and a little bit broken. He hands it. You see him in a scene with Angela Bassett,
And
the
he hands
CIA
him, yeah.
person, and it's perfectly fine. And I didn't catch that, but going back, I'm like, oh well, shoot. So, but that played really well when we get to the eventual reveal that he is, outright admitting that he is John Lark. Um, when they replace uh, Solomon Lane with Simon Pegg's character, which that entire sequence, I'll touch on that in a second, but the entire arc for Ethan's character where he doesn't want to sacrifice one for the many. Like you see that pop up multiple times throughout this movie, where it almost feels heavy-handed, but like the whole plot of the movie starts with him not wanting to sacrifice Luther to secure the plutonium. Uh, so I think it's justified throughout this movie. But you get to that sequence where you think they're taking Solomon Lane to Vanessa Kirby's character, and like they fully tricked me with this one. They made me think that's actually Solomon Lane. They took Benji with them. He's wearing a mask. He's going over there. Um, which also, quick shout out to Benji. He got to wear two masks in this movie after not being able to wear one for three movies in a row. So shout out to that. Um, but then you get the reveal where Henry Cavill's like, spouting all this stuff. He's John Lark, and then you see Benji pull up the line that Henry Cavill said. It's just a bunch of trick or treating. Or no, no, that's not what he says. He says, "Sorry, it's just part of the
It's
job. No
all
hard
yeah.
feelings." And then you get Alec Baldwin, who we thought was, out of the picture at this point. He comes up. He has the gun at the back of Henry Cavill's head. I'm like, that's kind of stupid. That guy also plays Superman and The Witcher. Like, you don't stand that close to him with a gun. And sure enough, he grabs the gun. He's pointing and he tries to shoot him, and it's empty. I'm like, this fucking movie, like that entire sequence, like my jaw was on the floor. I was like screaming and pointing. I'm like, that was like the highlight of the movie for me. And oh man, that scene alone puts this in like the upper half of this list for me for sure. But to kind of move things forward a little bit quicker, we get to that last sequence. Like you hear about how this group, the Society of the Apostles, started a smallpox outbreak out in wherever that the last sequence takes place, and you're like, you don't really think about it, and then they start putting the pieces together, like, oh no, they have a medical field set up here. They have a bunch of X-rays, so even if we were to set up some nukes here, they wouldn't necessarily be able to figure it out because we have X-ray equipment that also gives off radiation. But also, if a nuke goes off here, we poison the water source for like a third of the world's population, and it's just the slow escalation that also all of a sudden becomes, oh shit, this is a real big issue. We got to take care of this. And then you rope in his wife, who I did not expect to see again in any capacity, let alone seeing her actress's name in the opening credits of this movie. And throughout the movie, you get little bits like Luther's like, yeah, we taught her how to hide and give a signal to say she's okay. Like I taught her myself. Like she's really good at it. Only to have her actually like work with Luther to like deactivate the nuke that they find, and then you have there's like three planes of action going on at this point. I mean, Luther's gets resolved pretty quickly, but then you have the helicopter chase, and then you have Rebecca Ferguson and Benji fighting Solomon Lane, and that was a fun. I really liked that bit. I think that really shows just how far Ilsa's characters come, where you see Benji starting to choke because he's hanging from the noose, and but she's like, I gotta take care of Solomon Lane, and you see that like she went from shooting at him in the last movie to no, I'm gonna save his ass because I like him too much, and the team is just solidified. I know we're missing Jeremy Renner in this movie, and that does get some negative points for me, but I obviously is working on Avengers stuff, but you you then get
Well,
the
they kind of they not to cut you off, but they kind of lucked out in that Alec Baldwin has his whole Rust moment and he
yep,
dies in this movie, and then
yeah,
Jeremy Renner has the uh, snowblower incident, and
mhm,
so he's not in the movie either. So neither of them have to show up in this next movie, and
right.
then be like, well, that's awkward.
Yeah, I did think about that, if I'm being honest. Like, well, maybe best not to have Alec Baldwin show up, regardless of, whether anyway, but yeah, his death scene didn't hit as hard as I wanted it to. I like the character, but it's like it didn't hit. But the entire like third act, like on the other side of it, because like the only thoughts going through my head are like, I'm just glued to the screen at this point, like seeing the helicopter sequence, like Tom Cruise actually learned how to fly a helicopter for this movie, and mad respect to that. I think Christopher McQuarrie, and you can correct me on this if I have it wrong, but I'm pretty sure he was quoted as saying like, "That's the fastest I've ever seen anyone learn how to fly a helicopter." Like he picked it up so quickly. And like, granted, he's also got like a pilot's license. I think Tom Cruise, but uh, it just adds something knowing that he's actually flying that helicopter. Like that was all practical.
For sure.
The way it ends, him crashing the helicopter into the other helicopter. I'm like, are you really both okay after that?
It
Like, I don't know if I buy that,
And then it
but
just continues. It's not even like it's that one bit. And then it's like the helicopters are falling down this weird like notch in the side of the mountain. And they're like, yeah, they're just okay.
well, like I didn't mind what came after that completely. I think when the helicopters crash into each other and bump each other off the cliff, I think that was a little bit much. But like then we get that fist to fist combat scene between Henry Cavill and Tom Cruise, and as unbelievable as that might be, since Henry Cavill is twice his size, it was still like the tensions amping up. We have like 10 minutes, 7 minutes, 5 minutes, to like get the device out of the detonator, and just by the end of it all, like you see towards the end of the fight, obviously you get the hook flying off and taking Henry Cavill down towards the helicopter and having that explosion. And it's like, okay, that's neat, but I'm more worried about the nukes at this point. We have like a minute left, and he's got to climb up this entire rope to get to the top of the cliff, and you just cut away from Ethan. You don't even see him for like the rest of the conflict. You just see Victor talk or Luther, sorry, talking to um, Benji and Ilsa. He's like, we don't really have a choice when there's like we take it off when there's 2 seconds left. He's like, why not at one? You have that whole back and forth. They're like, well, we're just gonna have to do it and hope that he, took the device out of the detonator. And you just see it, and it cuts to white. You're like I know they did. I know they did it. I know there's another one coming out in like a week, but like cutting to white, it took me out of the. It was a moment of like, oh shit, but then you see Tom Cruise hanging from the cliff. He's got the bit thing that he had to take out of the detonator in his mouth, and he just spits it out, and you're like, these motherfuckers. Like I haven't felt like this about a third act of a movie since Top Gun Maverick, which adds up honestly, but it was just tension on tension, and it's just when you think we're out of it, nope, we're not quite yet. And I and then you get the rest of it. You get the little bit between Ilsa and what's his wife's name? I never remember it. Julia. Just have that brief like back and forth, and it's like, okay, so she's sanctioned this relationship. All right, that's cool. I
Yeah, I do think there's a great part of that where like you get the scene when Tom is like trying to be so like he's like I'm so sorry, and
mhm,
she's like
yeah,
you have nothing to be sorry about. Like I've built this incredible life, and it's like it's a
yeah,
resolution to the through line from five of the like love triangle where it's like we can all be happy. Like I got a
hmm,
great life, you can have a great life with Ilsa, and you can one that is feasible to actually do while you're
right.
out running around and doing these things.
And that's what I liked about it. It was like, you know that he's married from the third one. You know that they're not together from the fourth one. You know that like there's this potential love interest. Maybe that gives people some pause. Like maybe it feels weird that his wife that he still cares about is out there, but you throw this bit in there, and it's like, well, no, it's all okay. She's cool with it. He's cool with it. Everyone's cool with it, and it's just a nice little bit of resolution to what many people might have been hesitant about, and I liked it. I appreciated it. Uh,
Yeah.
and I did like just wrapping everything up with the bow, just like how they handed um, Lane over to MI6, and that clears Elsa from anything that she did over there. Um, but yeah, I think overall, I just really like this movie. This one was just a lot of fun. I There are lows to this movie. I think Angela Bassett's character, she doesn't get much to do, and she's a phenomenal actress. I just don't think her character is all that interesting. I think Henry Cavill, I think I agree with you to an extent that he could have used a little bit more, used better, I guess. Uh,
He's got bland dialogue is his thing. He's just kind
a
of like
little bit, yeah.
the bad guy.
hmm Yeah, and I think Solomon Lane is better in the last one. I think it's interesting that, for him being the main villain of Rogue Nation to be used again like this, and he's not the main antagonist is interesting as a concept. I don't know. It doesn't not play well. It's just kind of there. You're like, okay, neat. Um, I don't know. The highs in this movie kind of help me look past any problem I have with this movie. I This is an easy, top of the line for me. Like this is like a great, phenomenal action movie.
Yeah, I think there's this interesting piece again from listening to Christopher McQuarrie talk about making these movies,
hmm
where he says like essentially what happens in these movies is him and Tom Cruise and the guys they go scout places,
Yeah.
and they're like, "This is a cool place. All right, let's incorporate this." And then there's like a loose outline of a story, and it just like drastically changes as they're making the movie, and they just kind of do what they feel in the moment and
hmm
kind of build these movies that way of just kind of like what's a cool scene or a cool action or whatever that we can do in these different places. And I
hmm
think that that's great. However, it causes some problems in this movie in the third act for me where like I as much as like you're saying with all of the like the different reveals and stuff, at times it felt like it was so much that like you couldn't even tell who was deceiving who anymore, and you're just like I don't
Yeah.
even know really what's going on. Like there's so many deception lines that I can't like track all of this in the third act of this movie. And then I think there's like a distinct difference in the way that it looks. Like the action scene, the helicopter action scene, I think this is no actual knowledge is like a reshoot because it looks like so much of that is CGI in like a way that the
mm,
rest of the movie is not. And so like
Hmm.
that's why it feels so out of place to me because I I mean I could be wrong. They could have just shot it, in line and that's just how it ended up being. But it looks so different and so CGI'd, especially when you compare it to like the helicopter action in the sky is all shot and all really happened. And then
Yeah.
after they like once they crash and then they crash again and they crash again, it's like so much green screen and CGI that like it
Mhm.
didn't it didn't land for me. Um I still think this is a great Mission Impossible movie. This one for me, obviously this is our last one, so you'll know where it goes. But for me, this lands at number 3 on the list of Mission Impossible movies.
Yep. No, this is number one for me. No question. I honestly, if I go back and watch Rogue Nation again, I can see maybe there's competition there, but these two are far and away like my favorites of the series. I think the gap between two and three for me is it's not big, but it's like I'm never gonna consider Ghost Protocol as one of my favorites. Where I
Yeah.
do Rogue Nation and Fallout. Like on any given day, that could potentially switch. Uh, yeah, this fucking movie, dude.
And that leads us into the new one, Mission Impossible 7, Dead Reckoning Part 1.
Part
Except it's not
one.
out yet, so we can't review it. But
Nope.
we will be back later this week with that review. So if you enjoyed watching us break down these Mission Impossible movies and want to see what we think about the new one, and we will place it in our rankings in that review as well, so you can see where it fits. That'll kind of be a running thing for us as the movies come out. We'll just keep adding them to it. So tune back for that later in the week. If you want to see any of other content, we do streams on YouTube. We put videos out on YouTube of us with movies, games, trailers, all that. And then we also, if you want to follow us so you can know when stuff's getting released and all that, follow us on Twitter. That's where we'll put out all that information. Other than that, we will see you next time. Thanks.